part of the process, I guess. Um, Welcome to the second day of Desplore. Desplore is an initiative I took earlier because I felt like mostly Africans don't have access to a lot of people, and that is why we are not really going that much in terms like regards to this industry. So I took it upon myself to reach out to the best people I know and the best people in the world and sell them my idea and hoping that they will buy into it. And I was very lucky when I was able to get a chance to talk to this great man, Chris Doe. Like I said earlier, I call him the GOAT in this business. I follow him, I watch him every day. He's a mentor, he's a father, he's everything to me. And I'm very honored to have you today, Crystal. Really honored.
Thanks. I'm happy to be here, and thank you everybody for your patience and hanging in there with us. I would just say to ignore the chat while there are a couple of random people in here. So let's get to the business at hand. What are we going to talk about today?
Well, Chris, today I wanted us to talk about the business of design, and I felt like it's one of the problems we have here in Africa. Most artists have problems with time management, which I believe plays a role in the business of design and even how to manage clients. We also have a problem with our pricing, even how to market ourselves. So I just feel like who else could talk about this better than Crystal? So
Mm,
that's why we're here today.
okay. Is there something in particular to the audience that's tuning in that I can help them more specifically than the broader advice I would give people about time management?
Okay, so per the survey I made, you see, people want to know in terms of how they manage, let's say, client management, so the time they spend maybe with clients, and see, people have like two jobs. People are doing freelancing and agency as well. So I think I'll take this opportunity to ask you, how are you able to manage your time as you posting very often on Instagram, and
Hmm.
you're also a CEO of the future. We have so many things going on. How do you really manage your time?
Okay. You do need to keep in mind that I have a whole team. There are 12 people who work for me full time that are on staff, and then three people who work offsite also full time. And it's through their combined efforts and energy that I'm able to do as much as I can. And also, I want to let you know, you mentioned this before. I am married, I'm a husband and a father, and my wife is a partner in every sense in everything that I do. So she's able to take care of a lot of the things that I personally just hate to do. I mentioned before, I hate dealing with paperwork, contracts, reading long documents. I don't even like to deal with invoicing and things like that. So I built up a team and a partner in my wife, and that they're able to help me do all those things. So most of my time, my discretionary time, is lumped together so I can do the things that only I can do. And that's why it seems like I'm doing the work of two or three people. It's because, well, there are 12 people behind me
Oh,
and a wife partner who helps me out. And that's how I'm able to do this. The other thing that I've done is I try to concentrate different tasks and activities and segregate them to different days. Typically, we live stream on Thursdays and Friday, and so that my mind is geared towards doing live stream and producing content for those days. On Monday, I typically spend the time writing. Tuesdays, I read. Wednesdays is for meetings, and meetings are very different now in this kind of COVID era. So I'm having a little bit more time because there are fewer meetings, but I'm also spending more time managing people. If you are trying to figure out how to get more done to be more productive, it's not necessarily about time management. It's more about goal management. It's you gain productivity and efficiency when you're very clear about the goals, about the things that you want to achieve in your life. And so that's what I would do. By having clear goals and focusing your attention towards those goals, it helps you to make decisions about what you should and should not do. And this is why, like, I wake up with purpose. I wake up with clarity. I know what I need to do every single day. So it's that discipline and that clarity of the goal that allows me to get my stuff done. Because otherwise, just like you, I want to do a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I want to read this book, or I want to play video games or watch a Netflix show. And I don't, because I'm clear with what I need to do.
wow. Okay, so with regards to your time management, if you have a certain goal and at the middle something bumps in, which is actually urgent, Do you really does it interfere with your goals? Like, I think you set a target for yourself when you woke up, this is what you have to do. Then maybe something really happened, like maybe something really bombed in. Does it allow you to interfere with what you've set at the moment?
Yeah, can you give me an example of what might bump in?
Like something very urgent. Let's say with regards to design, with regards to clients, let's say maybe you have to get a job done, then a pending client or maybe a pending job that comes in, would you let it affect your the goals you've set at the moment?
I'm going to say something that I think is going to resonate and be very popular with people tuning in. A client's lack of planning or poor planning doesn't constitute an emergency in my part. There's, if you set up rules for yourself that you don't respond to emails within 24 hours, that you don't schedule new business calls that happen at the end of the day on a Friday, and if you live by those rules that you put in place for yourself, these policies, if you will, then you won't run into these problems. Right now, my inbox gets full really fast, and I only check my email twice a day, or at least I try to, once in the beginning or once at the end of the day. The frequency in which you check your email can pull you in a lot of different directions, and it's very hard for us to find concentrated time of deep focus work, the work that matters to us. So I like to work in 90-minute sprints and then take a break because that's as long as I can hold my attention and focus. But also, it reminds me to get up, to walk around, to think about things. And now that we're working from home, a walk around the house actually clears up my mind and allows me to return back to another 90-minute focus session or sprint. And it really rejuvenates me. So that's how I manage that. So if there's an emergency, a newly created emergency because the client is panicked because they haven't planned out their day or their agenda very well, I'm not going to really have to deal with that. And if they really need my help, it's going to cost them dearly.
Oh, that's really wonderful. So one thing I also want to ask you is with the same time management, what message do you really have for Africa? Um, you see, I tend to realize that sometimes your world or like the Europe and other continents have different um, different time and how they go about stuff than here in Africa. So sometimes I listen to most of the things you say. They are very, very good. They're very impressive and they're mind blowing. But I also try and look at our terrain here in Africa, how things goes on. And I'm just like, how do I even implement what you're saying here in Africa? How am I going to adjust? Okay, because let me use myself as an example. Maybe here in Africa, I think the economy is a little bit off. I have a client that I'm working on, then maybe another client comes in with a bigger offer. I can't just tell the client to go like that, just go. I'll just might want to keep it like try and put it together, like maybe work hand in hand and see how I can keep both money at the same time. So how do I adjust? Like, what would be advice for me?
Okay, so there's a couple of things. That's a very good question, and I want to be able to answer this. But first, I want to say because Fred Brown has joined us, I think I recognize his name, Fred. He wants to know what the agenda for today is, and we have not done a good job of setting that up at the beginning. So, Fred, although this is a webinar set up by myself, it's actually for Bernard, who's running this webinar, and he wants to talk about the business of design. So, we're going to spend the next hour or so talk about things like marketing, time management, pricing, and whatever else he wants to talk about. Okay, so we're going to float from topic to topic, but the specific focus for today is to try to address the issues of people working from another country, especially in Africa, which is where Bernard is based out of. So he's based out of Ghana. So that's what we're going to try to do. So back to your question. Your question is, I don't have the luxury of saying no to clients because I need the work. I need to make money. I got to support myself, my team, my family, my loved ones, and it's not so easy for me to say no. So if I'm doing a project and I've accepted the project and a bigger, better client comes along and I'm thinking to myself, oh my gosh, I have to take this on. First of all, it's more money, it's more prestigious. How can I say no? So right now, Bernard is making a very difficult decision. He's choosing to be promiscuous with his client. He's dedicated himself initially. He's made this promise that I'm going to give you my full undivided attention, and something better comes along, and he says yes to that. So now he's not going to have his full attention on client A or the new client with more money. This is very problematic and it's going to stress you out. I know it's going to stress you out because now you're always running behind. You're not giving the project the love and attention that it needs. And your clients are eventually going to start to feel this. So you have a couple of options. The first option, I think the best option is, how did you get into the situation in the first place? We have to kind of go back to the beginning. Is because you were operating under a scarcity mindset to begin with. The first client who came to you, if you had set up some kind of minimum level engagement, an MLE, to say like, I'm not going to do any project for less than $10,000, let's just say. And the client comes to you and it's like, I have $3,000. Do not accept that project. Tell them right up front, I'm not sure your project's worth $10,000. I'm not even telling you I'm worth $10,000 for this project, but in order for you to engage with me, my minimum level engagement is 10,000. And if you can't spend that, I'm gonna have to move on. I'm gonna have to kindly pass. And I'll tell you why. It's because in order to occupy my attention, which is what you're really buying, I need to be able to charge that much so I don't take on the next client. So that we prevent the problem before it even begins. So if we were able to say no to that client, when the bigger, better client comes along, then we're able to take it. So the power of marketing and positioning is this. When you are positioned correctly, you have to say no more often. This is what this really means, because you cannot be all things to all people. All right, let's just say forget it. You know what? I needed the money. I had to pay rent. I know in your ivory tower, you can say no to clients and you have a minimal level of engagement, but I had to take it. Now a new client comes along and I have to take that too. So let's just assume now that you just have to take these things. What are we going to do? Okay, what you need to do is find help ASAP. You need to get somebody else, maybe multiple people, to come in to help you do the work that you're supposed to do, because you can't just work 24 hours nonstop day after day. So this is where preparation comes in handy. You should have a network of freelancers, people who are going to work for you on an hourly basis that you can call depending on their rate and their specialization, their skill set, and their temperament. You're going to be able to call on these people, and you should have a list, like a prioritized list from 1 to 10. So if you need a logo designer, you start going down the list. You reach out to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the first person who responds, who's committed to doing this with you, who says yes, you start working with that person. And that's how you do this. So you don't want to just keep saying yes because you have finite capacity. David C. Baker talks about this. If you want to grow in confidence, your availability or your capacity, your opportunities have to be greater than your capacity. You have to have more opportunities than you have capacity to do. Nothing helps your confidence more than that. That means more clients are calling you than you have the ability to service. So what do? You say no, you refer them to other people, or you raise your rates, and you keep doing that.
Well, that's really amazing. So if I really get you correctly, um, I will also want to like follow it with another question. Do you have a routine with regard to time management? Like as you said earlier, though, that you set your target, but do you have like a specific like hour or like specific time you allocate to each of them? And what happens if you're not able to achieve them?
Okay. Are you talking about allocating time to project?
Yes,
Like
as
paying?
in with managing your time in terms
Mhm.
of time management. What if you set a goal, then you're not able to like achieve that time as in work within that? Like for example, from 2 to 3 p.m. I'm supposed to do this, but from 3 p.m. to 4 p.m. I'm supposed to do something different. What if I'm not done with the one I started earlier? Do I stop and continue with the other one, or do you have to let it eat into the other one?
Yeah, it's a really good question. I don't try to schedule my time like that. The only time that I'm going to schedule my day with an hourly breakout like that is for podcasts and webinars and things like that. And then my schedule is very much regulated because I have to be somewhere else or I have to be on a different call. And so I have to manage that. And if you're going to be a good manager and producer, you want to build in buffer in between each task. These can be gaps that expand and contract. So if you allocated yourself, let's just say 4 hours to finish this logo, and unfortunately, creativity doesn't work like that. You don't just say 4 hours, I'm gonna have an amazing logo. You kind of have to work at it. So you need an extra 30 minutes, but you've already scheduled another project or another meeting, so you're gonna have to take a break. So what I would suggest is not to schedule your tasks back to back and give yourself some buffer in between that will allow you to bleed in or start early on another project if you finish. And that's how I would do that. But let's say you're trying to do this from a time management, cost budgeting point of view. You have put in a bid for an identity system and you've allocated 100 hours to design the logo. And it's going way past 100 hours and you're starting to panic that you're going to lose money on this project. Well, this is a clear indication to you that you've grossly underestimated the project. And this is pretty typical for creative people, that they will underestimate and think that they're better than they are and the task is simpler than it is. And so they'll guesstimate incorrectly. So use this rule of thumb. Whatever you think it's going to be, multiply it by 1.5 times or 2 times or 3 times, because realistically, it's going to take you that time. So operate under your best guesstimate and then allow yourself the flexibility to take more time if you need it. And if you finish early, congratulations, kudos. It means that you're doing really well and you're gaining from the experiences that you've been working on projects. Okay, so I think I answered the question, or if I didn't, let me know.
Okay, I think you really did. For the sake of time, I think I would move on to the next one about contract. I would want to ask you, to you, what is contract and how does it affect us as creatives, as designers?
Okay, good question. I'll be able to answer this, and we'll get to your questions in the Q&A in a little bit. Everybody just hang tight, okay? About contracts. What is a contract? Now, a lot of young designers, people who are starting out, think that the contract is this ironclad document that no matter what, it's going to be your armor, your safety net, your thing that you take to a judge someday and say, see, it says here 2 revisions that my clients asked for 4. I want that money back. I want to let you know, if your word is no good, the contract is no good. If you do not trust the person in front of you, a contract will not save you. And I'll tell you why. You might be right and correct in the eye of the law, but to try to litigate and collect this money afterwards will consume more money and more time than it's worth. You need to just realize that. A contract is nothing more than a written down agreement in terms of what you and I think we said to each other. That's all it is. So if you want to, I would prefer you do this, to say to the person who's standing in front of you and say, this is going to be $40,000. We're going to do 3 revisions for you. If it's more, depending on the complexity of the revision, I'm going to have to charge you an overage and you'll pay us X, Y, and Z. Is this clear? Because I'm going to send you a contract that basically says the exact same thing. Are you good with this? And if you trust them, if you feel like there's a good vibe and energy and they're not snakes, well, the contract is a good way to formalize that. But you could do something quite simple. You could just type it up in a deal memo and send it via email. Here's why you want to take words and put them down on paper, because we have different ways of remembering things. Like, I'll give you an example. I was talking to a friend of mine, talking to her about teaching a class for me. And she said, Chris, I have written in my notes that you said it was going to be X number of dollars an hour. And I said, I don't know what you wrote, but I didn't agree to that. And I never even said that because I know I cannot afford to pay people that much to teach this class for me. And this is why there's misunderstanding. So we want to take what you said, what I said, and we want to put it into a piece of paper, a document, and we want to send it to each other and say, does this sum it up? And then you say yes, and then I know at least we have some kind of agreement. This document is only going to be good when and if things go south, and you can say, you know, I gave you the first 2 extra revisions above and beyond, and I thought we're going to draw to a close here, but it looks like we're going to add more revisions. And if you refer to that email, the deal memo that was sent to you, you'll see that we're beyond scope here. So I don't want to do any more work without getting paid. That sounds fair, right? And they'll say, yes, you're right. And I appreciate you doing the 2 extra rounds. Thanks for letting me know. How much is the extra round going to cost? And then you can have a dialogue about it. So I think we have to get away from this idea that the contract is a magic bullet that's going to save you. If you don't have a good feeling, if you can't trust the person who's in front of you, if you don't come to terms verbally, the contract is worthless.
Wow. So as a brand strategist, and you advising the creatives here in Africa, what would you recommend, or what are the key things we should look out when we are signing a contract, or what are the things that we should first consider when we are signing a contract?
Yeah. Okay. So first you need to read your contracts. If the clients are sending you a contract, you have to realize it's drafted by their attorney and they have more attorneys and more money than you. That's why they're your client. That you need to read all of it and you need to understand it. And contracts follow a pretty formulaic framework. And so if you start to learn how to read one, you can start to learn how to read more. Hey, Bernard, can you do me a favor? Can you hit mute? I'm hearing a lot of static on your side when you're not talking.
Okay, I can do that.
I'm picking it up. Thank you. I'm very sensitive to hearing, guys. Okay, so I'm no attorney here, so take my advice here with a grain of salt. There's a couple things you want to look for. You want to look for the total agreed amount. You want to look for clear definitions of scope and what constitutes a revision and what the out of scope work might the rates in which you might charge. So this is pretty typical. And you can say if the work falls outside of the scope as previously described, we will work at a blended rate of $100 an hour. And we will notify you in writing prior to doing this work. And we'll need your written approval within 24 hours prior to proceeding. It's those kinds of things. And then you might have late penalties penalties for late fees. You're probably going to want to define who owns the artwork. Typically, if a client's hiring you, they're going to own the finished artwork because it's going to be a work for hire, but they don't own the work process and the work byproduct. That's the stuff that you generate in the creation of this thing. This is very critical because some contracts from clients will say, we own everything that you do, all materials, process, ideas, and inventions. What you want to do is just redline that out. What they do is they put that in there because most creatives are lazy. They don't read their contracts and they just sign that. Most clients don't act on that, but it's there in case they want it. So they can say, hey, send over ideas 1 through 100. I know we paid for idea 101, but send those other ones. We want to do something else with those. That's where if you go back to your contract and you signed it and they own all those work product, you have to send it over. So you have to be clear about that. The other thing that is very, very important for you is to indemnify one another from lawsuits. If the client does something that's illegal or gets them into legal trouble, that though the people who sue them can't sue you, you indemnify one another. Likewise, if one of your employees or freelancers does something weird to this project and causes a lawsuit or a problem, then you're going to indemnify your client from a lawsuit. The other thing too is you want to say that a settlement is not going to exceed the value of this contract. Let me tell you why that's important. You could do a $2,000 logo for somebody, and unbeknownst to you, it infringes on a trademark that you just didn't know of. You were innocent in this in your ignorance, but you still had done this. So when the client gets sued by another company because they're using the same trademark and they sue them for $10 million, but you only did a project for $2,000, you want to cap the damages to the value of the contract. This is very important. The last little thing is you want to be able to put in there portfolio usage. You want to be able to say the works that were created can be used for my personal portfolio and any PR efforts on our part in all media or all mediums. Okay, this is very, very important because if you don't get that, you've done a project for $2,000 and they tell you, we want you to sign a non-disclosure agreement. We don't want you to show any of the work or the work process. This severely handicaps you from being able to get more work. You can't show the work that you did, the work that you're so proud of. And that has a lot of value to you. So if the client asks for that, and some clients do have a right to ask for that, and they need it for a lot of different reasons, you can say, look, I know I bid this project for $2,000, but if you take away my ability to go get work from this work, that's going to set me back another $10,000. So if you want me to strike that, I'm going to have to add $10,000 to make it worth my pain and trouble. So that's going to be now a $12,000 project. Is this something that you want? And this is a good way for them to have a gut check and say, well, no, you can go ahead and show it because we don't want to pay an extra $10,000. Everybody wins. If they say yes, you got another $10,000 for doing no extra work. Okay. What's the next question?
Thank you very much, Chris. I want to leave, for the sake of time, I want to leave other questions for the attendants to also take a shot with regards to contract and time management. The next question I would want to ask is about client management. I'm sure you also did a few hits on that whilst you were doing presentation. You were talking about it. How do you manage your client? How many clients you manage at a go? Like, do you have a limit? You did I think you posted on Instagram about clients from hell, and I would be very happy if you could touch a little bit on that. Which client should we avoid? Avoid. Which one should we accept? Which one? How do we manage them when we get them?
Okay, great. So mute yourself again, please. All right.
Okay.
Here's the thing. Avoiding clients from hell, and there are a lot of them out there. Here's the thing. You don't need me to tell you who the clients from hell are because you already know. You know it. You feel it because you meet them and they're aggressive and they're loud and they're obnoxious. They talk too much. They talk too little. They're abstract. They're non-committal. You can tell. You know, but what do? You mute those voices in your mind because you're so desperate for the work. You need the money so badly. You're operating out of this scarcity mindset that you lie to yourself. You tell yourself a different story. Oh, the client's nervous today. They're not going to be that bad. Or, you know what? They're just having an off moment right now. And you accept the job. And lo and behold, those same demanding clients who are very hard to please, maybe impossible to please, who belittle your creativity, belittle your input, and the value that you add to what is being done, they're the same person. I know this. How one client acts in one situation is pretty much how they act in most situations. You don't just transform into a whole different person. So they're showing you their Mr. Hyde from Dr. Jekyll. They're showing you their monster right to your face, but you're too blind to see it because you're so hungry for the project, the prestige, or the money, or something else. And so these are lies that you tell yourself. So I can sit here and I can outline every single one of these things, but if you're not willing to listen and to spot it, there's nothing that you can do, or nothing that I can do. So I would say first, trust your gut. You know, your gut is the thing that tells you, I have a bad feeling about this. Listen to it. You know who they are. And each one of us are going to have different parameters for what constitutes a bad client. Okay, so for a person who likes to talk really fast, you like people who talk really fast. And for people who talk slow, people who talk fast, they're put off by that. So that might be a red flag for you. Emily Cohen, who was on our show, on our live stream, she had said every time you spot a red flag, add 10%, add 20% to your estimate. So 5 red flags drop, double your price. Or take my advice, run away from that client. Say, you know what? I get a feeling we're probably not going to be a good fit for each other. I'm just feeling that right now, and you deserve somebody who's going to give you everything that you want. I'm just not that person.
Oh, that's amazing. I think that was really, really insightful. Um, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to pick what you're saying and trying to bring it here to Africa. Um, Here in Africa, I don't think most designers have the luxury of, sometimes it's not like we don't see the clients from hell. We see them, but things are tough. The market is different. So we try and even we don't want to listen to our guts. We just want to like go in just for the money. But I feel like maybe we have more opportunity when we have access to, like I said, we're in a position whereby we know that if we run away from this one, we get another person or we get someone to patronize that. So this takes my question to marketing. How do you market ourselves as designers? How do we really, how do we make people feel our presence? How do we market ourselves as creators?
Okay. Well, we live in an incredible time where no matter where you live in the world, if you have access to some technology and the internet, you can have the same presence as a giant corporation. You really can. Okay. So how do you market yourself? First, we have to understand marketing. And I really like Seth Godin's definition of marketing from This is Marketing. He says marketing is the generous act of helping other people achieve their goals, not your goals, their goals. This is a little different. This is kind of strange because we have had a lot of examples in the last 50 plus years of what marketing looks like, and that looks like advertising. Advertising has been very pervasive in saying This is what marketing looks like. We tell people what we want them to believe about us, and we repeat the message over and over across all platforms until you submit to our will. Bernard, can you mute again? Can you
Sorry,
remember
sorry
to
about
mute?
that.
I'm still hearing that, please. Okay. Um, that uh, the truth is now in this day and age, marketing drives customers away. I'm sorry, let me rephrase that. In this day and age, advertising drives customers away because we don't want to be interrupted by what it is that we're in terms of what we're doing by these messages that we get bombarded with. However, we seek out the recommendations and the referrals of other people. We seek out things that are instructional, that are entertaining. And so then we have to kind of shift our mind away from this thing. So, how do you help other people achieve their goals with this generous act that we're talking about? Well, you need to start with understanding who these people are. And you need to be able to pick them out from a crowd, as he says in his book. So instead of going broad, which is how most of us attack marketing, and we need to then shift into like narrowing it down into the smallest viable audience. Smallest, that's clear. Viable means big enough to support what it is that you do. So if you're so specialized in what it is that you do for a very small group, there might be not enough business for you. But in my experience, most creatives think that this is small enough and they're about two levels too big. They still need to drill down even smaller. I've yet to hear somebody who says to me, I want to market to this audience, and then for me then to react by saying, that's too small, that's not viable enough. So whatever you think you need to do in terms of narrowing down your audience, do it 2 more times. Keep narrowing it down. So if you say, I do identity design for technology companies, well, that's too many for technology startups. Still too many technology startups in Ghana. Better technology startups in Ghana that focus on medicine. Okay, at that point, I think you have a big enough market that can support you and sustain you. But now you know who they are. You can profile them. You can try to understand what's a day in their life like. What are they looking for? What are they trying to achieve, both professionally and personally? And then you're going to identify these gaps between where they are and where they want to be. And you need to step in there and help them solve those problems. That's called opportunity. That's what you need to be able to do. The other way that you can look at this is once you're able to identify your smallest viable audience, is think there's this pyramid. It's called value to customer, okay? Think about the pyramid, and the 3 points in a pyramid look something like this. One is to reduce expenses. So you can save them money if you can develop a process that optimizes their production, their services, and save them money. You've created tremendous value to this customer. The other way that you can do this on the other point to this three-pointed pyramid is increase the revenue. So if you can expand their market beyond what it is they're doing today, if they exist in a traditional retail environment and you're able to take them online, fantastic, go do that. You can do really well. And the last, and not the least by any stretch, is the emotional benefit. Because you see, when we buy things, we're trying to impact some kind of change in our life. We're trying to move to a better place, and we want to feel something. So we buy fancy shoes or cars or watches because we want to gain social status. We want to rise in the esteem of other people. And these are signals to other people that we're successful, that we've made it. So we don't buy a fancy watch because it works better or it's more accurate, because the cheapest watch is as accurate as the most expensive watch. It's because there's an emotional benefit to this. So once we understand these 3 points, the value to the customer in terms of reducing expenses, increasing revenue, and the emotional benefit, we can start to produce something that they might want to care about. When we do that, we gain influence, we gain expertise, and hopefully, somewhere out of there, a client might pop up. So those of us that are more inclined to repeat the models of advertising, which is just to tell people, I'm good, check me out, look at my work. Aren't I really good? You're not going to get a lot of traction. You'll notice that on my Instagram account, I've grown pretty quickly when I started to use that platform to teach other creatives how to run their business or to grow their social influence. And by doing so, I went from, I think, about 50,000 followers to over 300,000 followers today in a very short amount of time. So that's me living what I tell you guys to do. All right. What's the next question?
So now that we know how to market or how to do marketing, now the question is, who do we market to? How do we define our customers? How do we know who we're going to market to? How do we like um, um, how do we narrow the niche? How do we narrow the people, our targets? How do we do that?
You could do something from Alan Dibb's book, The One Page Marketing Plan, and he says, do the PVP model. You heard of MVP, Most Valuable Player? So this is how I remember this. It's PVP. So the first P is for personal fulfillment. And you would rank anything that you're considering doing on a scale of 1 to 10. So what kind of joy does this give you? I mean, if you do something for money, but it doesn't give you any joy, your passion and your drive is going to be diminished because chasing money is only going to keep you going for so long. V is value to market. So you would then say, if I do this thing, a lot of people find it to be valuable. And this is great. So doing logo design, according to Fiverr, is worth 15, 45 bucks. Not that valuable. Doing branding, on the other hand, you can't get on Fiverr, and now the value to market goes way up. If you do brand consultancy work, then that goes up even more. So you kind of have to look, what is it that I'm interested in, personal fulfillment, and the value to market. And the last one is profit. We know this. If you bill $1 million and you have a profit of $10,000, you're a $10,000 agency. That's really what it is. So you kind of have to look at all three, rank them from 1 to 10, and then you have a total score of 30. The lowest score would be 3. And based on whatever ideas you generate and rank this way, you might find a market to focus on.
That's great. Now this draws me back to one of the most sensitive topics I wanted us to talk about today, the concept of pricing. I think it's one of our biggest challenges in Africa here as creatives. So I
Okay.
want to ask you how do you do your pricing? How do you charge?
Okay, this is the beast for us to cover. So I think we're going to probably need to answer this question and then wrap up, but then attack some of the Q&A things, okay? So let's do that. So again, thanks everybody for tuning in today and also sticking it out. We're going to try to do our best at answering the top ranked questions. Okay, so while I answer this question, Bernard, do me a favor and read the Q&A and highlight maybe 3 questions for us to answer. Okay, the ones that you feel are most relevant. How do we price? Well, as I'm reading different pricing models and theories, it boils down to 3. And if you are really interested in learning more about this, I highly recommend reading Blair Enz's book called Pricing Creativity. The first way to price is price based on input, like how hard you work, what time and materials, the hours that you spend on something. And that's typically how most of us start. And that's okay. And it's a good thing to do that. You just want to make sure you're baking into a profit, time that you spend in between making things, because that has to be accounted for. What do I mean by that? Well, a lot of us look at time on machine actually designing as billable hours. But what about time preparing to do that work? Reading, researching, sketching, thinking, brainstorming. Those kinds of things need to be accounted for. So if you're going to charge hourly, which is fine, make sure you're charging an hourly rate that is sustainable, that helps you to grow in your life and your business, and that there's enough money in there for you to save up something so that you're not living hand to mouth. At some point, as you're billing hourly, your client may say to you, I feel uncomfortable because I have no control over how much time you spend on something. You said it was going to take 60 hours, but now I can see that we've spent already 100 hours and I'm not that much closer to where I need to be. You're like, well, it's not really my fault or my problem. I told you the hourly rate and I can't predict how long it's going to take, and you've made some changes. So at this point, a client is going to say to you, next time we work, I want you to flat bid this project. I want you to price based on the output, whatever it is that you make. So when I hired you to do a logo, I want to pay for the logo. I don't really care how much time it takes you to make. So you've now entered into the second phase or second model of pricing based on output. This is the one that I'm going to recommend for now, especially if you're relatively new to pricing. So now you have to do a really good job of figuring out what the scope is and how much energy and effort that's going to go into this. Now, the client already understands this because who's taking the risk now? You're taking the risk. So with risk comes profit. Alan Drucker uh, said all profit in business comes from risk. So you're taking risk because you don't know if it's going to be longer or shorter. So you bake into it a cushion, a pad, if you will. So if you think it's going to take 100 hours and you really think that's really what it's going to take, 100 hours, you can bill or send an estimate for anything up to 80% markup on this, maybe. So you can send them an estimate for 180 hours and say, look, that's the bid. You pay me 50% up front, I'll get started on it. And they know because they have pricing certainty that they're going to pay a little bit more for it. Okay? I'm going to let this. I think it's going to be a little while. Can you hear the siren? Yeah. Okay. All right. It's almost gone. All right. So this is pretty good. And the reason why this model works better than the first model is because the first model, when you're charging hourly, you are selling time. So it is in your best interest to sell more time. So if you want to invest in a faster computer, a better video card, or a new Wacom tablet or something like that that'll allow you to work faster, guess what? You're going to make less money. And the natural argument that people give to me is just raise your rates. Yeah, you can keep raising your rates, but how many of you are really going to do that? So the truth is you're not really trying to work faster, you're trying to work longer and you're selling time. But in the second model, when you're selling the output, boy, the best computer, the best chair, everything that you need to make you work better is going to save you money in the long run and make you more profitable. Fantastic. You might invest in different systems and people and processes that help you to work faster because that's your intention. You're no longer selling time, you're selling the thing that you create. But even doing so, you may be leaving a lot of money on the table. Why do I say that? Because when you create a website for somebody, depending on who it is, a small business to a multi-billion dollar corporation, how they value that work is very different, even though what you do is exactly the same. Same amount of research, UX, UI, great design, great user testing, great analytics, clean backend. You've done everything right. But to the smaller business, and this could be totally the opposite too. In a smaller business, if they only do $2 million of business a year, if the website does really well for them, they might do $3 million. So they have a potential net gain of $1 million. But if you do it for a really big business, like an airline or something like that, and you screw up the UI, you mess it up, and it causes frustration, it could cost the airline tens of millions of dollars in lost business. So this is why when you price the client, when you price the result for the client, you have a very different number. I don't want to spend more time on pricing based on value because everybody wants to learn how to do that, but few of them have even mastered the second tier, which is the price based on output. All right, turn it back to you, Bernard.
Okay, Chris, thank you very much for this amazing presentation. Um, I think Prince Gabriel wanted to ask you, how has this journey been for you? Did you have to go through anything? How do you start? And what have been your experiences? Would there be any advice you want to give us, want to give to Africans? How's it been for you?
How's what been for me?
Journey as a brand strategist, as a creative, how has it been? Is there any advice you want to give to us?
That's a little bit too broad. I don't know how to answer that question. I've been in business now since 1995. I'm about to hit 50 years old pretty soon, and I've enjoyed every single moment of it. Moment of it. There were high highs and there were low lows for sure. I'm not going to lie to you and tell you that those moments when you want to get into a fetal position and just cry yourself to sleep. There have been rough moments, but I've enjoyed every part of it because from those depths, the mistakes that I've made, I've learned from those experiences, and hopefully, if I'm smart enough, I don't repeat them again. So it's been a wild journey for me from being a traditionally trained graphic designer to doing motion graphics, being a director, an animator, and everything that comes with that, to transforming into a brand strategist. And now I'm an educator. This is what I do. I teach people. I don't have any more clients. I don't want to do any more client work.
Okay. Oyamurede from Nigeria wanted to ask you that does volunteering on a project or within a circle of potential clients that can pay a higher form of marketing? What's your advice regarding this?
I don't understand the question. Can you rephrase it, please?
I think what is trying to ask is, and that's what we facing much more in Africa, as in doing jobs for free. That's if I'm getting him correctly. But I think I will leave it for him to touch on that for me to ask as well. Um, Friends want to ask, how do you match the current economic situation and your current living standards to your pricing? Is it reasonable to include these as factors in pricing?
Okay, so right now, if I understand this question, it's we're going through some really difficult, unusual, strange times right now. This is unprecedented. The whole global economy is frozen up because people can't go to work because of this pandemic that we're experiencing. And yeah, I think that if there was ever a time to discount or be a little bit more flexible and to be a little more generous with your time, your energy, and effort, this would be the time. Normally, I don't advocate for discounting or giving work away for free or doing work for quote unquote exposures or to build relationships, whatever that means. But this may be the one time. And we recognize this ourselves that people are hurting, that people don't know where their next paycheck's coming from. And our clients are going through the exact same thing that we're going through. So we've instituted a site-wide discount of 20% on the products that we sell because we think, look, you might not be able to afford this, but now more than ever, you need to learn the stuff that we're teaching. So we're trying to be sensitive to that. We don't want to be tone deaf to it, okay? But I want to caution you, use every other guideline that we've talked about today and on other shows about learning how to listen to your gut, to build relationships with people that you want to have a relationship with, not just because they want free work and guess what, you're a warm body they could throw at it. Okay? Those are not relationships you want to build.
Okay, thank you very much. Kojoja wanted to ask, how do you handle clients who have no budget and request for a proposal? Typically, clients who have not done projects like this before.
That's a very demanding client there. They want a proposal, but they have no budget. What are they expecting? The proposal is nothing. It's a blank page because you have no budget. A client that doesn't pay is not a client. They just want free work. And if you want to give free work, you start a charity. You don't mix those two things up. Okay? I just generally think that if we have this mindset that we're desperate for work and we're dying to prove ourselves, to validate that we're doing something good, we're going to make really poor decisions around business. And I don't want you guys to do that. I would rather you work on your own spec projects, speculative projects, things that you do just to beef up your portfolio than to do it for other people for free. Why? You have control. You get to do what you want and you get to flex your creative muscles. And naturally, the question is, well, are speculative projects valued less than real projects? No, because a bad project for a real client just means you do bad work. I just want to see the best that you can do. And we've seen evidence of this where people take on UI designs for famous companies and they blow up. People start reaching out to them, offering them job opportunities and writing articles about them. So this is some kind of myth that has been perpetuated in some circles where people think because it's not real, it's not as valuable. No, your thinking is valuable. The decisions that you make, the research that you put into your work, that's what's valuable. All right, let's do one more and then I think I'm done. Pick the
O-
best question, please.
Okay. I think I would. This from Deborah, from I think from Nigeria. He said, "Hi, Chris. Lots of love from Nigeria. Really grateful to you and the future team. Just learning how to use filters in my client or project acceptance process. I'm, however, having a bit of trouble excusing myself out of situations that are either stressful or toxic. I usually just ghost, stop taking calls or replying text or emails. This isn't very professional. Can you share practical ways to do this without leaving any bad blood behind? Some of these clients are people I respect or who are really gifted, but are just really difficult to work for or with.
Okay, good question. We'll end it on this. All right. So you said that you've done a good job of setting up filters. Maybe not. And we want to make sure when you give somebody your word that you pay me for this and I'm going to do this project, that just because you're not enjoying the process anymore doesn't make them a bad client. There's a very clear delineation between the two. And I want to be sure we're talking about the same thing here. So if you no longer love the project, it's because you committed to something and you wanted the money and you took it. So now follow through and finish out the project like a true professional. But if the client's being abusive to you, if they're being unethical, if they're being sexist or misogynistic or homophobic or whatever it is they're doing, and you're like, woo, I don't like working with this client anymore, there's a time for you to have this conversation, okay? And there have been several times in my career that I've had to resign a client. I had just had to tell them, you know what? I don't think we see eye to eye. I think you want something that I'm not capable of producing. So I'm going to refund you the unused portion. I hope you think this is fair. Again, I think you deserve somebody who understands and will give you what it is that you want. Usually they're shocked because more often than not, I just refund the entire amount because whatever money they paid me is not worth the mental anguish that I'm feeling right now. More often than not, I just say you can't use any of the work or ideas we've produced. If you want to use any of those things, just buy them from me. I'm happy to sell them to you, and you can do with it whatever you want. So you have to be able to have these kinds of conversations. There's another kind of client that is very fun-loving, that asks in a very nice way. So it's very hard for you to say no. They start off by saying something like this. They'll say, hey, Chris, how hard is it to do this thing? And you're like, well, it's not that hard. And then it just becomes something that you keep adding and adding. There's a couple ways to prevent this from happening. One is have clearly defined phases of revisions. So aggregate all the feedback, not piecemeal, and wait until a specific day that you've previously scheduled, like a Friday, and then do all that work. In each of the phase, before you start the second phase, you should tell them, I just finished phase 1. We have 2 more phases. I just finished phase 2. Heading into the last phase, I don't want to charge you any more money. I feel like we're not getting that much closer to where we want to be. Can we have a call or a meeting, consolidate what it is that you think you want? Because this is what I'm good for. I will finish out phase 3, but after this, you're going to incur charges. So you want to have this conversation before the last phase so that you don't have to do an extra phase because you never told them. We should not assume clients read their contract or are managing the projects for us. That's our job. So we need to manage the client. So in cases like this, I would advise that you hire a project manager, a project coordinator, something like that, who can be very good at communicating and keeping those lines of communication open with the client. If you do that, you're going to have less trouble, less heartache, and find that you won't have to resign from many clients.
I'm very excited. I think our time won't allow us to. There's a lot of questions, and I'm hoping that I will be able to share them with you via email. Then, if you get the time, you'll be able to get back with me with that so that I can share with the whole community. Um, I would also want to ask you a personal question. Do you have plans of coming to Africa? Like, do you want to bring the future to Africa? Because you would really love to know more about it.
Yes, absolutely. It's one of my dreams to come to Africa, and I think initially we're talking about coming to Ghana. Where else we're going to go? South Africa, maybe Nigeria. Is it Nigeria? There were a couple of cities that I wanted to go to, so there were some challenges as soon as COVID hit. So I obviously don't want to endanger people, and I don't also want to risk my life in this moment here. So when this pandemic is kind of behind us, I would definitely love to come there, and I think we can then have more intimate conversations. I like doing these kinds of calls with you, but not nearly as much as I like having conversations with real people in front of me because I want to see your faces. I want to connect with you and be able to help you and hear you. And that's very important to me.
Honestly, I can't wait to have you here in Ghana. You really need to try our food. I can't really wait to have you here.
I'm excited. So maybe next year, mid next year sometime.
Sure, I'll be glad to have you here.
Okay. All right. So I want to thank you for organizing this. And I know we got off to a bumpy start here and everybody for tuning in. I'm glad you were able to make it into this room. I hope I was able to help you. I will read your Q&A questions at some point, and hopefully you'll see the content filter out from us in some way, and you'll be like, yeah, he's answering that question. Okay. And I hope you guys have a great weekend.
I hope you also have a great weekend. Thank you very much.
Okay, take care. Bye bye.